Hi, everybody. It's me, Curtis, your effective speech instructor. I hope you all are doing well. So, I think I'm going to break this up into two separate videos, but today I wanted to talk to you specifically about introductions and conclusions. A lot of people ask me what's the most important thing when it comes to public speaking. Well, at first glance, you might think, well, obviously the performance of the speech is the most important. However, if the content of that speech and that the way that that speech is organized is not done so in a thorough, professional, and organized manner, then the audience is going to have a tough time getting your message. So you could be the most charismatic public speaker on the planet, but if your material is not organized and well prepared and communicated in a way that's easily understandable for the audience, then you're really doing yourself and the audience a disservice. If you recall from, I'm sure that you've at least started to read the textbook, is that your textbook authors have this concept of public speaking being audience centered. And basically what that means is that you have to adapt your speech for the particular audiences that you'll be speaking to. For example, let's say if I were giving a speech about gun control. If I were speaking in front of a group of people that I knew that were more or less inclined to agree with me, the way that I structured my speech and the rhetorical strategies that I choose to use would be different than, let's say, if I were speaking at an NRA, a National Rifle Association convention. I would have to, even if I was presenting the same material, I would have to do it in a different way so that hopefully the audience would understand where I'm coming from and hopefully be persuaded to accept my point of view. Another example would be, let's say on a personal level, I've gone twice now to my kids' school on Veterans Day because I'm an Army veteran and spoke to the kids. Well, when I'm speaking to a bunch of elementary school students about my military experience, obviously the way that I speak about it is going to be different than, let's say, if I'm hanging out with a bunch of my buddies on a Sunday afternoon watching football and being really, in a group of adult men and being very casual. The language and the strategies that I use to tell those stories would certainly be different than if I were speaking to a bunch of fourth graders. Okay, so that being said, your speech, whether it's a 3-minute speech or a 30-minute speech, and I also teach English composition, and I use this example with my English students, whether it's a 3-page paper or a 300-page book. Everything has a beginning, middle, and end, okay? And so when it comes to public speaking, the introduction, and you'll see later the conclusion, they're both vitally important links to this chain, the chain being your speech, okay? So I'm going to go over the introduction handout that's in the speech to related handouts folder, and then I'm going to add some more stuff as I go over it, okay? But if you're looking at, hopefully maybe if you have the handout in front of you, you'll see before I really get into talking about the introduction, I would like to discuss the idea of using sources. So for this speech, you have to use a minimum of 4 outside sources, okay? So since you'll be speaking about a wide variety of potential career fields, the number or types of sources that you'll be using will be varied. However, one good source that almost everyone might find useful is the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. And then I give the website on the handout. On this site, you'll find information regarding various career salaries, employment rates, etc. This site is very useful for finding credible statistics regarding most careers, okay? Regarding credible sources, you want to make sure that when you're looking at a website that it's hopefully as unbiased as possible. Now, for this speech, you're basically talking about your future career, so it's probably not anything that's really controversial or anything. But let's say, for example, if you were giving a speech on gun control or something like that, if you were getting statistics from, let's say, the National Rifle Association's website, you might want to take that information with a grain of salt. Same thing if you were looking at a website that's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, where maybe they calling for total ban of all guns. You might take their uh, information or statistics with a grain of salt. So you always want to try as much as possible to have um, as unbiased information as possible. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics is a really good place to start. And for this speech, since you're talking about your future careers, um, going to different universities' websites, for example, if you were going to be a physician's assistant, you could go to any university that has a PA program and find out the requirements. You can find a lot of stuff online where people who actually work as PAs talk about the advantages and disadvantages and their personal experiences, etc. So you shouldn't really have any problem finding sources for this assignment, and if you do, let me know. Okay, so often I've had students ask me about using Wikipedia. In my opinion, using Wikipedia really depends on the topic of your speech. If you're going to be giving some basic information, such as a person's birth date, um, that might not be bad, that might be fine. However, for hardcore statistical information, I would avoid Wikipedia. For example, if you were giving a speech on stem cell research, you definitely want to cite scientific journals, academic papers, etc., and not a source like Wikipedia. However, it's been my experience that sometimes Wikipedia is a good place to start, because when you type in a search, searching a subject on Wikipedia, and then you go to the page, usually there will be external links on that page, and those external links might lead you to some more credible sources of information that might prove useful in your speech. So generally speaking, I'd avoid Wikipedia, but again, it might be a good place to start. Remember, when you're looking for sources, sometimes you might luck out and do a search and find the source immediately, but sometimes you might have to click around and read 3 or 4 things before you find something that might be useful. So you're gonna have to be patient and a little bit diligent, okay? And I also mentioned, obviously, talking about this idea, you'll be verbally citing your sources in your speech, okay? Um, and if you, again, using Wikipedia, because it's not a refereed type of site, if you use Wikipedia in your speech, it could make you come off as ill-prepared and it could hurt your credibility, okay? All right, so going on. Now focusing on introduction. An introduction basically serves 5 important functions, okay? Number 1, you want to get the audience's attention. How do you do that? You could use an illustration, a personal anecdote, an interesting fact or statistic, a quotation, a little bit of humor maybe, depending on the topic, a question, a reference to an historical event or a recent event, a personal reference, a reference to an occasion, blah, blah, blah. So you want to get some people call this the hook. An example for, let's say, the speech you're going to be doing in a future career. If I was speaking on being a pharmacist, okay, I might come out and start my speech like this. Introduce myself. Hello, my name is Curtis McQuarrie. Did you know that according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that the average pharmacist makes $85,000 a year? Now, I just made that up, but what I did was I said, did you know that the average pharmacist, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, makes $85,000 a year? So an audience member sitting there goes, huh, that's a pretty good chunk of change. And so you've kind of got the audience's attention. All right, and you've cited your source. You've let the audience know from where you obtained that information. Okay. Remember that there's a video on the Public Speaking Tips video links document in the Speech to Handouts folder. That there's a specific video on introductions and conclusions, but you want to have something that gets the audience's attention. Okay. Obviously, you're going to be introducing the subject. Okay. Present your central idea to the audience, more specifically your thesis statement. Additionally, you may need to define pertinent terms depending on your topic. Remember, don't assume that your audience is overtly or even implicitly familiar with your topic. So going back to using the example of a physician's assistant. You might open up your speech with the hook saying, did you know that according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average pharmacist makes $85,000 a year? However, some of you might wonder what exactly a physician's assistant is. What is the difference between a physician's assistant and a nurse, or a physician's assistant and an actual doctor? And then you might quote another source saying, well, according to the American Medical Association, a physician's assistant's duties include blah, 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 blah. And then you might give a little bit of historical background information. For example, I've heard enough physician's assistant speeches that if I remember correctly, basically the PAs, the idea of a PA came from the military. They originally came up with the idea where they needed people that could kind of fill the gap between nurses and doctors. But anyway, so far I've had a hook to get the audience's attention. I've defined, here's what a physician's assistant actually is. Okay. Now I'm going to kind of go into my thesis statement. Or actually, what I might want to do, and this is a requirement, you have to do it somewhere in your speech. But a lot of students like to, in their introduction, talk about how or why they became interested in that career field. So I open up with the hook. I define what a physician's assistant is. I might say something along the lines of, and I'm kind of making this up from my own military experience. Well, the reason I became interested in being a physician's assistant is that when I was in the military, even though that I didn't work in the medical field, whenever I would go on sick call or have an illness or an injury, most of the time I was treated by a military physician's assistant. They are able to do minor surgeries and things like that. And one time I went in and I had a mole removed from my back, and the person that did it was a physician's assistant. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty interesting career field, because you don't have to go to school for as long as an actual doctor, but you have all these great responsibilities and you're able to do all these great things. And so I thought, wow, this is something that I might want to look into. And so I've decided to pursue being a physician's assistant. Now I'll move into my thesis statement. I believe that being a physician's assistant is a great career field for the following reasons. Bang, 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 and then whatever, like the 3 or 4 reasons. And then I would say something along the lines of, in my presentation today, I'm going to discuss why being a physician's assistant is a great career field. Also, I'm going to talk about some possible disadvantages of this career. And then I will also discuss the training and education that goes involved in becoming a physician's assistant. So now, that was basically my intro. I had the hook. I defined any pertinent terms that the audience might not be familiar with. I briefly explained how or why I became interested in that career field, and then I gave you my thesis statement. And the thesis statement in what's called a preview, where you're letting the audience know what you're going to talk about and the order in which you're going to talk about these things, are kind of intertwined together. And I really think this is a good idea to have this in your speech intro, because when you tell the audience, hey, I believe that this career field is a really good career field for the following reasons, and in my presentation today, I'm going to speak about this career field in the following order. So now the audience, in their mind, they're going, okay, this is where Curtis is coming from, this is what he's going to talk about, this is the order in which he's going to go. So now your audience's brain is set up to receive the information, and as long as you go in the manner that you said you would, you're nicely organized, okay, and it makes it easier for the audience to take in that information, so you're not jumping around back and forth, okay? Give the audience a reason to listen, okay? Tell your audience how the topic directly affects them. In other words, for those students unsure of their major or future career field, they may want to further explore or research your topic. For those who are certain of their career field, let's say I'm talking about being a physician's assistant, but there's audience members that are like, well, no, I'm an accounting major, I'm an engineering major, and that's where I'm staying. I'm not changing my major. Well, at least you can make them understand how important it is to have the physician's assistants or whatever your particular career field is, because we're all in society together. So even if your audience members aren't necessarily swayed, we're like, well, no, I want to be an engineer, but at least they'll come away from your speech going, wow, for people that are interested in the medical field, a physician's assistant is sounds like a really good career field, and it's something important. We need those people in society. So that's another function of the intro, okay? Number 4, establish your credibility. Tell your listeners about your commitment to your topic. In other words, how you became interested. I already mentioned that. So when you're using this combination of outside sources, like the Bureau of Labor Statistics or any other sources in this case that define medical terms, what a PA is or whatever, and then you're also using your personal story, how or why you became interested in this career field, it sets you up that you're showing that you've done the research, but you're also passionate about it. Because if you give a speech that has all this hardcore facts and figures and statistics, it's a lot of good information, but most people like a human element, okay? So when you talk about how or why you became interested in this career field, it's really important. And in some cases, it can really make a huge difference to the audience. For example, this is a true story. A former student I had, because I also teach public speaking at Pitt. I had a student at Pitt that was a nursing major, and when she gave her speech about being a nurse, when she spoke about how or why she became interested in it, the reason why was very powerful. It turned out several years ago she had been in a hospital visiting a sick family member. And then as she was like making her way out of the hospital, leaving for the day, she walked by an area and there was a woman sitting by herself on a couch in a waiting room crying. And so my student felt really bad, and so she went and sat down next to the lady and said, "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need anything?" And it turned out what happened was this lady had just found out that she'd been diagnosed with cancer. And she had no friends or family there with her. She was all by herself. And my student happened to walk by, saw the lady crying and felt bad, and sat there with her for about 20 minutes, kind of, just trying to be kind of a shoulder to cry on. And from that experience, that experience combined with the experience that she went through watching a family member in the hospital, those things combined, and they were very powerful for her, and those were two huge things that made her decide to go into nursing. So sometimes the reason why you became interested in something can be very powerful, and it can have a profound effect on the audience. And then over number 5, preview your main ideas. Okay, I've already mentioned that. And then finally, just to refresh your memory, I'm sure you probably haven't gotten there yet in the textbook, but chapter 12 in your textbook goes in depth on constructing your introduction. So if you haven't gotten to that point yet in the textbook, you might want to take a look at that, okay? So final comments. The introduction serves as the foundation for your speech, okay? In a manner, it is a contract or a promise that you're making to your audience. You're telling them what you're going to be talking about, why it is important to you, and why it should be important to them. Also, it lets your audience know the basic organization in which your speech, or manner in which your speech will proceed, okay? So the intro is your opportunity to spark the audience's interest, okay? All right. So, I'm going to stop for now, but please make sure that you look at the introduction handout and think about what I've just talked about. Look at chapter 12 in the textbook and watch the video about introductions in the public speaking tips links document, okay? And then I'll also post another video shortly on conclusions, okay? All right, I'll talk to you soon.